Hello, hello, and welcome back to Shatter Our Souls with Novari. Now, last time we finished off the last of the circuit races, as well as circuit adjacent, such as sprints and the lovely lap knockouts. And I'll be 100% honest, this track had me absolutely in pieces. So, for those that don't know, in the tier of races for Blacklist number 4 JV, the second race on the top row is a 4-lap circuit race, and it's a behemoth. This is one of those races where, for whatever reason, the AI gets incredibly strong. And well, for lack of better terminology, it mopped the floor with me. Over the course of the last week or so, I have been throwing myself at this track, aiming to successfully beat it. And thankfully, we're here. It happened. But it was not without loss, without heartbreak. Because this course ended up with over an hour worth of failed attempts, one after another, before this came out. And the reality is that most attempts ended right here, with a racer like Adam flying ahead of me and way out of sight. Now, most of the time, it was Adam and Lolly who are both using a car that we're going to be very familiar with by the end of this, the Dodge Viper. They absolutely flew. I had attempts where they were 2,000 feet ahead. I had by the end of the first lap, or 13 seconds ahead. I had attempts where there was never a hope of passing them. And so, getting to the point I did, where I get to say that this challenge was completed, I think I can finally point to the why. Now, as I'm sure you've noticed, this track is fairly long, fairly winding, and he just crashed into the gas station. So there's a few reasons. First and foremost is the vehicle choice. Now, as I've stated in the past, the Lexus has decent handling, poor top speed as a general statement. And this has a few effects. The first major one is that because it has decent handling, is that, yeah, I can handle the turns with relative ease, but it's not the turns that ever caused me the problems. The turns themselves are just kind of there, but the straightaways and the long, wide curves, those are what got me. The car doesn't have the top speed to keep ahead of a Dodge Viper under ordinary circumstances. And something as simple as a single um, mess up like that really have long lasting effects. Lolly ran into the wall there. And so every time that I had attempted this, usually it was just because my opponents had superior top speed and acceleration coming out of those turns. And that was really frustrating. But this isn't called Shatter Our Souls for nothing. And that's just kind of the way it rolls. Now, the reality of it is this particular set of races, it was evil. I do not wish on anybody to have to redo this. But it does speak a little bit to the versatility of the game's engine as well, to allow for any vehicle to be able to win, if only with a little bit of extra luck thrown in. Because I don't think it's lost on anyone that the reason I'm in first place is because each of the major players have made a major error at some point or another that have prevented them from passing me once more. Adam just got in another accident in which fell behind Lolly. So we're heading into lap 3 here. And each lap is at least 2 minutes long. Now, for some games, this might not seem like much, but for Need for Speed, some races are over and done with in the span of 2 minutes. Therefore, it makes very, very little difference as far as, or makes a lot of difference in this particular circumstance. Because if the races last longer, all that's really doing is extending the amount of time that an accident or a mistake can happen. Now, I say it in that way because ultimately it can happen at any point. I could hit a random taxi and this entire attempt is out the window. And so what we're looking at is effectively a small window into the realm of speedrunning. Now, I've mentioned speedrunning in a lot of games in the past, and speedrunning is one of those areas of gaming that I've never been good at. I've never really dug into to say, yeah, I'd like to try that, I'd like to do that. Because speedrunning in video games requires a level of precision and game know-how that I simply do not have, nor do I have the patience to master. My way of going about challenging myself in video games is to take a game and put absurd rules on it. Use a specific vehicle. Avoid a certain type of combat. Something like that. But speedrunners use every tool in the kit. And that really makes them a totally unique way of playing games. Because if you would tell me that if you 10 years ago told me that I could beat Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo in under 2 minutes, I would have laughed and said no way. And yet, there are people who have accessed the end credits in less than 2 minutes because they could. And it's probably been multiple people. There have been people who have managed to beat the original Ninja Gaiden end to end without getting hit. Okay, what? He just absolutely flew, landed on his roof. Like, that car was destroyed. I kind of want to see that again. That was absolutely brilliant after the last few hours of struggling. But, anywho, knowing what it is that makes this so hard really shows the versatility, and it really shows just how, I suppose, how the game and this series functions. Generally speaking, handling in the Need for Speed games is not the most desired stat in at least Carbon and Most Wanted. That is because of the speed breaker ability, which allows every vehicle to have reasonable handling and cornering. The oddballs that don't have good cornering, that still require something of that nature, are vehicles like the Lotus Elise. which has exceptional cornering and handling stats, but have ridiculously high stats elsewhere to still keep it competitive in other ways as well. Thus, from a statistics standpoint, I can say that this car will never beat the Lotus Elise from a stats perspective. From other perspectives, such as player skill, you got a little bit more to talk about. But anyways, you didn't come here to hear me talk about a overly long race, or overly long circuit race. You came here because I promised that JV would fall. And in that endeavor, I believe it's time to begin the battle against JV. Blacklist number 4. Now, JV has 3 challenges, 2 speed traps, and a drag race. Now, the speed traps are, of course, as standard as they come, as far as they go. The speed traps are fairly simplistic and fairly open-ended. It's a sprint race, but the player with the highest top score through X number of checkpoints in the race gets the win, effectively. Now, we already know that JV is handling a vehicle that is definitely stronger than the Lexus. And actually, after I double-checked the stats on it, and every single stat on his vehicle is stronger than the Lexus's. Meaning, there is absolutely no way to beat him relying solely on the vehicle. Everything that we do has to come from skill, planning, and perhaps a little luck. I think mostly skill, though. We're going to say skill because, well, I like the idea that it's not coincidence if I win. Yeah? Anywho, we're sitting about halfway through the first race. Got about, I think that said 70 mile an hour ahead of JV, which sounds ridiculous. But the reason why I'm so much further ahead is because JV is using, or isn't using the nitrous oxide through each of the checkpoints. NOS does give a bit of an extra boost to the score for the player, meaning effectively I am turning the game in my favor using something as simplistic as a quick shot of NOS through each of the checkpoints. This also does show a little bit of the weaknesses in the AI. The AI is designed around certain concepts, including trying to beat the player to the end, long and short of it. But in a non-standard race, they really struggle to hold up against the player. Personal opinion. Anywho, going into race number 2, the drag race. Drag races are kind of a 50-50. If this goes well, I'll have no issues and I can just say, well, I win, moving on. If this goes poorly, it's going to be Groundhog's Day, and that's not exactly ideal. Oh, no, there's a semi-truck. No. Oh, no. JV total. So, if you didn't see, JV hit the semi truck over there and totaled his car outright, meaning I don't need to focus on being the fastest car in this race because I'm the only car in this race. If I pass the finish line, I win. So we're just going to take this nice and easy here because let's not tempt fate. It was kind of a pathetic 83-mile-an-hour finish, but, be that as it may. Last race. And, yeah. One thing I notice with Need for Speed Most Wanted is that the main opponents, the bosses, the Blacklist racers, are often often easier than the challenges leading up to them. They're more of a victory lap. And that's really disappointing because playing the game as a kid way back in 2005, I loved this game. But I never really paid attention to the bosses themselves. I never paid attention to the Blacklist racers because they were never the problem. I used to sit around and play the game going through police chases for hours on end because I absolutely loved it. But the Blacklist racers never really did much for me. And it was not until I was much older and actually managed to beat the game did I really understand the why. It's because while the game has a phenomenal world, a relatively decent AI, and a very challenging game as a whole, it lacked difficulty in the really important moments of the game, that being the Blacklist 15. Now, to be clear, this is not me saying that this is a completely flawed game and toss it away. Rather, it's good to pay attention to what you enjoy and acknowledge the flaws within it, because if you can love something, knowing it's imperfect, that means more in my mind. Anywho, with that, JV has been defeated. So, 2 markers from JV. We get... Oh, yes, the pink slip. So, if you like what you see, drop a like, leave a subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Until then, have a good one.